Who hurt you? Who hurt you? You really gotta trim that chest hair. Not every chick has a backup guy. Who hurt you, Alexander? Who hurt you? Hey, Alexander, who hurt you? Who hurt you? Who hurt you? Not everyone likes my videos, and occasionally I get comments or emails with this question: who hurt you? Of all of the shaming tactics that I encounter, I actually find this one the most disgusting, and I'm going to explain why. Obviously, the YouTube comment section is not a place to open up and talk about personal trauma. It's not the appropriate context. And so, assuming that there was someone who hurt me and I was deeply traumatized by it, I'm obviously not going to talk about that to some stranger on the internet, and they must be aware of that. And so the question, who hurt you, is obviously not asked with any reasonable expectation that it's going to receive an answer. But then why ask? What's the point? Now, I'm guessing that a lot of you have experienced this in your personal life when somebody is not intellectually equipped to be able to actually engage with your arguments, or they're just too lazy. Then they resort to shaming tactics or name calling. The implication of the question, who hurt you, is that the reason that I would make any content that explores negative female behavior is because I must be making up for some personal pain I've experienced in my life where I was hurt from a woman. If I'm just some guy with a personal vendetta, then that bias disqualifies me as someone who needs to be taken seriously or have the truth of my claims investigated. Everything I say can be safely dismissed. There's no need to look into it to find out if my arguments actually have merit. Now, there's an important distinction here, because it would be different if the question was, did somebody hurt you? Because that's open-ended, you know? I'm asking because I actually don't know the answer to this question. But that's never the way that it's phrased. It's always, who hurt you? Their framing is that it's obviously safe to assume that there was someone who hurt you. It's just a matter of asking who. These assumptions are extraordinarily arrogant, and it's made even more embarrassing for them by the fact that with me, they've got it wrong. There's a video on my Patreon page that goes into my full personal history as to why I make this content, and their guess is way off. But let's do a hypothetical. Let's assume that I was the victim of a really bad female relationship. My partner had a personality disorder, she was really abusive, and it caused me lots of personal pain. Now, let's say that pain motivated me to start a YouTube channel where I educate men about abusive, low-quality women and teach them how to identify amazing, beautiful, high-quality women, where I warn against the dangers of the former and encourage men to start relationships with the latter. So long as the information was good, why would the fact that I was motivated by personal pain disqualify me from talking about this subject? Imagine if we had ignored the message of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because, as a black man, he had personally experienced pain from racism. And so we said, you are disqualified from speaking about civil rights because you have a bias. Or imagine if we discounted the opinions and message of gay activists because they had personally experienced homophobia. Or we didn't listen to the stories of female rape victims because we said that their personal pain meant that their opinions didn't count. You can see in all of these situations how ridiculous it would be to apply this standard. And yet, are we comfortable saying that in the instance of a man who has suffered personal pain as the result of difficulties he had in the dating market, somehow he's not able to talk about those issues? That is ridiculous, and frankly, it's sexist. It's further evidence that our culture, as progressive as it claims to be, is still not ready to really listen to men's pain. And it's especially awful because it plays on our tendency as men to not show pain, to swallow our emotions, to be tough, and to be strong for the sake of other people. No man likes experiencing pain. No man wants to be a victim. We have this biological programming inside of us that tells us, as men, we're not important. Our job is to take care of others, to protect and to provide for women and children. There's no time to feel our own emotions or to process our own pain. We are only valuable to the degree that we're making other people's lives better. Now, I strongly believe that evolution in positively selecting for these traits has benefited mankind as a whole, but has done so to the detriment of the mental health of each individual man. That's why I'm in favor of any cultural progress that encourages men to feel their own pain, to experience and to process their own emotions, and any messaging that tells men that they have an inherent worth themselves as individuals and that their value to society is not purely measured by what they can do for other people. I think it is the ultimate irony that the kind of person who would write, who hurt you would consider themselves to be a feminist ally, someone who fights against the patriarchy and fights against toxic masculinity. But in their dismissal of the validity of male pain, as evidenced by their who hurt you comments, they are actually the ones creating toxic masculinity. They are reinforcing this idea that male emotions are not welcome, they're not valid, and that having pain as a man disqualifies you from having a point of view. Of course, I wouldn't expect them to actually have the self-awareness necessary to understand and appreciate the implications of their own words. But despite my low expectations, I still find the question, who hurt you, to be particularly odious because it contains a recognition of male pain, but simultaneously dismisses it. I can see that you're in pain. I can see that somebody hurt you, completely aware of that. But at the same time, I'm going to completely dismiss everything you have to say, and I'm going to proudly advertise my dismissal on this public website. What kind of twisted individual simultaneously takes pride in acknowledging and dismissing someone's pain? I mean, that's some psychopathic shit right there. Have a look at this comment. This comment section is so bitter. Who hurt you? Now, you may think that this is just a throwaway comment and that there's not too much that you can read into it, but really, when you stop and think about it, you can see that there's a lot of significance in a comment like this. To be able to recognize other people's pain and suffering and so arrogantly dismiss it, that's scary. What kind of a person has a worldview like that? Compare that with another comment on this channel. I'm seeing a lot of comments from men who've been hurt in relationships. I know I'm not the woman who hurt you, but to all of you, I'm sorry that we hurt you, and I hope that you can heal and come to a more open-hearted place again. That's how a normal person responds when they see other people's pain. They express empathy. Now, I don't agree with her when she says, I'm sorry that we hurt you, because with that kind of phrasing, it seems as though she's taking personal responsibility for the actions of all women, which is silly. She's not personally responsible. Like, I personally have a huge amount of empathy for women for all the things that they've had to endure at the hands of low-quality men. Men who have beaten them, raped them, abandoned their children. My heart breaks when I think about all the stuff that women have had to go through. But I didn't do any of those things. I treat women really well, so I don't feel personally responsible. But that small difference aside, I can understand where this commenter is coming from, because that's the normal response. You see someone in pain, you recognize their suffering, and it makes you feel bad. You feel compassion for them. Now, you could say that her response is indicative of what you could come to expect from a high-quality woman, but that sucks. Like, the threshold shouldn't be that low. This shouldn't be some amazing, like, incredible thing. Like, wow, a woman showed compassion for men. This should be the norm. This should be standard. Now, let's bring some balance to this, because I think it's equally important on the flip side to say that having experienced personal pain and suffering does not grant you some kind of special recognition. Your personal suffering does not automatically elevate the validity of your point of view. There are people out there who have personally suffered from racism or homophobia, and while you have my compassion and empathy, that doesn't mean that I'm automatically going to agree with your opinions. Being a victim does not grant you some kind of special status where you have this exception. You can substitute your pain and suffering for objective facts and arguments. There are plenty of guys out there who have personally suffered at the hands of abusive women, and while I feel sorry for them, they have my compassion, that doesn't mean that I'm always going to agree with the solutions that they propose. What I'm trying to say is that your personal pain is irrelevant. Arguments shouldn't be accepted or dismissed on the basis of personal suffering. They should be argued on 1, merits, and 2, intentions. Now, that first one, merits, that's easy, because to find out if something is true or not can always be decided by an investigation into the facts. As Ayn Rand says, in any disagreement, reality is the final arbiter. Now, intentions is a little bit more complex, because I think that it is legitimate to screen someone's opinions based on what is their motivation. So for this channel, for example, if I did videos that explored female psychology and evolutionary theory, but secretly my motivation was to stir up anger against women, like I was cherry-picking stories and cherry-picking research to support that point of view, I think it would be valid to dismiss a lot of my arguments. You wouldn't be able to trust that what you were seeing, what I was presenting, was an accurate representation of the facts. You'd always have that suspicion in the back of your mind, maybe he's only talking about this, maybe he's only showing this because he just wants us to hate women, and I think that would be completely legitimate. And it's not as though you can't have a point of view. It's not as though you can't be biased. It's that you need to be upfront about what that bias is so that everybody can actually interpret your message, all of your data that you're presenting, with the context of that particular bias. It's only fair. And I do have a bias. I absolutely have an agenda. And so, in the interest of fairness for everybody listening right now, I'm going to state explicitly what my agenda is. The way I see it is that life is hard and it's absolutely filled with suffering. But it is made easier by positive relationships that we have with other people, people who love us and who support us. I see a lot of unnecessary suffering in people's dating lives and in their relationships with men and women not understanding each other, not understanding these gender differences and how men and women see the world and experience the world differently. Now, I want everybody to be in happy, healthy, functional relationships. And it's my hope that educating people about gender differences is going to assist in this aim. I want high quality people to be with other high quality people. And I really don't want high quality people to fall for the tricks and manipulations of low quality people and get fooled into being in a relationship with them. I think that any tribalism based on gender, the idea that men or women can succeed at the expense of the other, is completely moronic, and I think that anybody who pushes that point of view is a scumbag. The way I see it is that men and women are not in competition. They are complementary. We win together or we lose together. I am equally concerned for the happiness of men and women. And the reason that I give advice to men is because I'm a man. That's what I know. I'm not qualified to give advice to women. But if there's some female equivalent channel to mine out there doing exactly what I do, but giving advice to women, it 100% has my support. I don't want to see amazing, incredible, high quality women getting sucked into relationships with low quality men. That would absolutely suck. So that's my agenda. I want to help in whatever way I can because I genuinely dislike suffering. And I am especially angered when I see unnecessary suffering. Suffering based on ignorance of just not understanding what makes us differing is heartbreaking because it's so easily avoided. Now, given all that, if you look at my content and all you see is a man spreading bitterness and anger because of his own personal pain, all that really reveals is how limited your scope for nuance is. It shows your own lack of compassion for men's pain, your propensity to demonize men and to pedestalize women. Your interpretation says a lot more about you than it does about me. So next time you're feeling smug and righteous and you want to write "Who hurt you?" in the comment section, be aware you're only embarrassing yourself. How do you tell if a woman is genuinely interested in you? Is it possible for a man to be submissive during sex but dominant in a relationship? And what's with this phenomenon of divorced women who have lots of casual relationships and casual sex to make up for lost time? All of these topics and many more are covered in exclusive videos available to my Patreon page. This includes my latest video, my thoughts on prenuptial agreements. I debunk the idea that it is misogynistic to ask a woman to sign a prenuptial agreement. I talk about the degree that it's reasonable to allow the government to dictate the terms of your relationship and the way to frame it to a woman so that it's empowering for both you and her. I talk about what's reasonable to expect in terms of financial remuneration after a marriage dissolves and the differences between my country, Australia, and countries in places like Europe and North America. And lastly, I explain the personal circumstances that would warrant you demanding a prenuptial agreement and what cases where it's really not worth the bother. If you've been wondering whether or not it's sensible to get a prenuptial agreement, or you've been wondering how to bring it up to your partner without offending her, I highly recommend this video. For every video that I post here on YouTube, I post an additional bonus video on my Patreon page. That means that at the moment, you're only seeing half of the total content that I create. If you would like access to the other half, then please go and sign up at my Patreon. It's just a $5 a month subscription, and you get instant access to a whole bunch of exclusive content. It's a wonderful way to support the channel, and I would love to see you over there.